Hi everyone, this is Lara Hammock from the Marble Jar channel, and in today's video I will show you how I set up YNAB to work best for me as someone with maybe a non-standard profile. I am pretty much debt-free and I have money left over at the end of the month. So I will admit that my profile looks different than most people starting out with YNAB. We don't have any debt, and except for a very small mortgage, and we generally have money left over at the end of the month. In addition, I am a former Mint user and I have that standard budgeting mindset. So the way that I use YNAB reflects that a bit. My hope in putting this out there is to provide some ideas to those who may have been really successful in reining things in with YNAB, and also those like me who budget even when they don't absolutely need to, just to keep things on track. So I have been keeping a budget religiously since I was in college. Since I like financial data and reporting, I do it regardless of whether we really need it or not. We have gone through some lean years where budgeting has been required to stay out of debt, but I also budget in times of plenty, which obviously looks a little different. So right now, my husband has a great paying job, which not only allows me to stay at home with our teens, but also to go back to school part-time. He only plans to do this for another couple of years, and I will go back to work soon, so our budget will look different at that point. Either way, budgeting helps us to know where our money is going and also not to spend all the way up to and over our income, even if it should be more than enough. So let's talk about how I set up YNAB. So first, let's cover my budget groups. So this YNAB budget is a dummy account that I have set up for demo purposes. It has about half of the categories of my real budget, but it gives you enough information to get the idea. The way I set up my budget groups in YNAB shows you that I still have a traditional budgeting mindset. Monthly expenses. So I have a giant budget group, which I call monthly expenses. This contains everything that I think of as living expenses. If we were to lose income, we would still need to find a way to pay off these expenses each month. The reason I put them in one large group is that YNAB totals group items for you in the heading. So I can see how much I've budgeted for these line items, how much money I've spent this month, and how much we have available for future expenditures, particularly in the sinking fund categories. So coming from a traditional budgeting mindset, I'm used to thinking of income minus expenses. And then what's left over can be used for extra things like towards savings or travel. I still think like this, so I like to be able to make that calculation in my head. YNAB is not great about showing you how much income went into to be budgeted for the month, but I like to go to the reports view and use the income versus expenses report to see this. This report shows you how much you have actually spent, but I also want to know how much I have budgeted against what I have planned to budget, which you can see that I put in the group line item description. Savings. So next I have a group called savings. I only have 3 categories in this group: my college tuition, travel, and savings. So YNAB teaches you that you should not have a category called savings, that you need to be way more specific about what exactly you are saving for. You know, give every dollar a job. Well, I can't be bothered splitting this up into more detailed line items. If my hot water heater goes, it comes out of here. If we do big things outside of our normal monthly expenses, wisdom teeth surgery, taking down trees in our backyard, dealing with the flooding in our basement, it usually comes out of this amount. I also can't be bothered to split my travel up individual trips. Again, if we were pressed for cash, I'd probably have to be more detailed, but this level of detail works totally fine for me right now. Reimbursements. People deal with reimbursements in different ways through YNAB. I have 2 different kinds of reimbursements: personal ones and ones for my husband's work. The personal ones are just normal family reimbursements, like when I pay for 6 tickets and 4 people still need to pay me back, or returns that I'm expecting a refund for. The second kind of reimbursement is for my husband's travel. He travels a ton for work and puts all of his expenses on a work American Express card. So we are responsible for paying off the card, and then he asks his firm for reimbursements. But for both of these situations, the spending and the reimbursements don't always happen in the same month, which would leave a negative in the available expenses and would drive me kind of nuts. So I like to keep them in their own group. And finally, credit card payments. So this is a YNAB default group, which I can't modify, that tracks credit card expenses and payments. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about just a few of my budget line items. So first of all, I use Nick True's advice and put lots of detail in each line item, including how much to budget each month and the day of the month the bill is normally due. So I order my line items by whether or not the item is a sinking fund or not. So you can also call this an accumulating fund. So YNAB calls these true expenses, but they are just line items where you want the money to accumulate from month to month. So some of the things that I have in here are auto expenses, insurance, which I pay every 6 months, Christmas, and kids' activities. I have an idea of how much I want to put in each month, but the expenses don't always come out every single month, so I need these totals to roll over. I keep my non-sinking funds on the top, so these can go to zero at the end of every month, and my sinking funds on the bottom. I have them delineated by this ridiculous description for my very first sinking fund. So why do I do it like this? At the end of every month, I scrape down all of my non-sinking available funds into savings. If you are paying off debt or saving for an emergency fund, you can scrape into one of these accounts. Basically, I do it to reset each line item so that I can start from zero the next month. A couple of notes about several of my line items. I use groceries to cover all consumables. So that includes things like shampoo and laundry detergent, as well as actual food stuff. I use a line item called household as a place for all non-consumable items, new kitchen spoons, replacement dehumidifiers, etc. But also as a kind of dumping spot for other things that don't have a clear category. So that includes parking fees, outings with our family, or newspaper subscriptions. Each of us also has our own personal fund. So my husband and I both get a certain amount each month for personal spending that acts as a sinking fund, meaning whatever doesn't get used this month rolls over to the next month. It's different per person depending on needs. I stay at home, so I don't need nearly as much spending money as he does. So this is how we cover individual outings with friends, clothing purchases, and our own subscriptions that don't benefit anyone else in the family. So lastly, I have a category called extra. So this line item helps me to roll with the punches the way that YNAB requires. So rather than steal from other categories, if our electric bill is particularly large this month, I have this extra account to cover anything that needs an extra bump for the month. I don't log any expenses to this line item. I just use it as a piggy bank to fund other accounts. And finally, let's talk about my accounts. Simplicity. So for daily expenses, I am a big fan of simplicity. I keep just 2 bank accounts on budget, and I am seriously thinking about eliminating the money market and going down to 1. We have 1 credit card that we pay off at the end of every month, and this investment account, which I'll talk about in a minute. So my husband has his own bank account where he keeps all of his personal fund. He finds it easier to manage that than consulting YNAB. So his account gets funded from every month from YNAB, but whatever he does with that money is totally up to him, and we don't track it. I keep my personal fund on YNAB without using a separate account, since I'd rather do that than use a separate debit card, but whatever works best. So you'll also notice that I have no tracking accounts. So I think that tracking accounts are great for paying down debt. You can see my video on that. Some people also keep their savings or investment accounts in tracking. I don't do this. Whereas my daily spending accounts are really, really simple. My investment accounts are numerous and complicated. I keep track of them on a spreadsheet, and I don't see a reason why I would want to have information about what they are doing daily. Frankly, this information would just create bad decision making on my part, so better to be out of sight, out of mind until I do my quarterly reporting. What I do have is a fake investment for year account. Okay, so it took me a little bit to figure out how to deal with regular investments that we were making throughout the year. I didn't want them to all show up as an expense. After all, I was just moving money from one savings vehicle to another. I also wanted to have a sense of how much we were investing throughout the year. So I created this fake on budget account, and every time I invest money, I set it up as a transfer between our checking account and this fake investment account. It doesn't look like an expense on my budget, and it keeps a rolling account of how much I am investing. Then I zero out this account at the end of the year when I do all of my end of year accounting. And that's it. Let me know what you think. Comments are always appreciated, and thanks for watching.